All right, let's take a break and then do get to the real business of the day, which is talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. All right, so we started on Monday talking about Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, classic American book. Probably for our generation, it was like a mandatory read for a certain kind of person. Definitely everybody who went into journalism has read this book. But you went through it during the week, Walter, and you had some thoughts. You had some things you wanted to get to about Fear and Loathing. Do you want to start with some of those?
Well, just a couple. And maybe I should hold them for later. But the question of what is the problem, what is the sickness that Hunter is diagnosing in America? You know, he's come for this stupid race, this motorcycle race, which in itself sort of shows the emptiness of American life. It's a bunch of motorcycles are going to race really fast around a track, and it's really just a promotion for the motorcycle companies and for this hotel, the Mint Hotel. It's the Mint 500. It's beneath Thompson to cover it. It's really beneath journalism to cover it. But these pseudo events and these junkets are, you know, what's going on in 1971. So he comes out for it. And because it's a stupid story and there's really no even way to cover it, what do you do? Like drive around with them? He portrays it very farcically. A bunch of dust flies up and suddenly you can't say the motorcycles, and then what are you supposed to write about it? You know?
Yeah, so the way he describes is so classic because it's a metaphor for a lot of things. But so he's talking about trying to cover the Mint 400. By noon, it was hard to see the pit area from the bar casino 100 feet away in the blazing sun. The idea of trying to cover the race in any conventional press sense was absurd. It was like trying to keep track of a swimming meet in an Olympic-sized pool filled with talcum powder instead of water. The Ford Motor Company had come through, as promised, with a press bronco and a driver, but after a few savage runs across the desert looking for motorcycles and occasionally finding one, I abandoned this vehicle to the photographers and went back to the bar. And he goes on to describe it similarly. The only visible action was at the start-finish line. Like, occasionally you would see something in a dust cloud and then it would disappear again. This is kind of like what most journalism is. You get little glimpses of stuff.
You're covering stuff that was actually created to be covered. First of all,
yes,
it's not actual news. It's not a riot. It's not a war. It's not a protest. It's not anything. It's a pseudo event that Ford Motor Company mounted to get a lot of journalists on the hook, give them a little free stuff so that they're basically under blackmail, and say how great it is, because what else are you going to say? Actually, there's nothing to say. All you can do is interview the drivers. And he has a neat little vignette of or maybe it's an imagined vignette of a Life magazine writer calling their editor, giving their lead paragraph on the Mint 400, and it's pitch perfect. And it's basically bullshit PR with fake morals and a kind of sort of underlying patriotism about, I don't know, American prowess or something.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me see.
He gives us an example of how the hack would cover it,
Well, I want to find the better example that's actually not in this book, but from Fear and Loathing in the Super Bowl. So in the Fear and Loathing in the Super Bowl, one of the jokes is that he writes the lead of the story before the game even starts. And the lead is the precision jackhammer attack of the Miami Dolphins stomped the balls off the Washington Redskins today by stomping and hammering with one precise jack thrust after another up the middle, mixed with pinpoint precision passes into the flat and numerous hammerjack stomps around both ends. And so he sort of makes fun of the classic lead in this one too. But the point is, there's nothing to cover in a pseudo event. And the Super Bowl is actually better than most of them. He's famous for covering an even worse form of pseudo event, which is the presidential election,
Right.
where you're again shuttled through scripted scenes and instructed to extract some meaning out of something that is at best cloudy, right? And so he's talking about how this can't really be the story, and I'm sure, Walter, you've had this experience, but this is a moment that a lot of young journalists experience, where they're on some kind of assignment and they realize this thing I've been asked to do is not even in the same ballpark as the actual point of the thing I'm in the middle of. And that can be deeply disillusioning for some, but not for others.
It was deeply disillusioning for me. Okay, there were many times. Okay, a Super Bowl or a Mint 400 is a artificial event to be covered using artificial conventions, and there's really, since there's nothing to write, you're just going to have to write about it the way it's always been written about. But plug in, new facts. The score was different. The star of the game was different. The weather was different. But really, it's a job for AI. And you know that even though we didn't have AI yet, you're like, oh, they want me to be a computer. And I thought I was like this creative, searching, right, and insightful, swaggering dude. And like, really, they want me to like be a Texas Instrument calculator. And frankly, they could do it back there as long as, I just send in some facts. That's kind of a lot of how Time Magazine is composed, actually. The people on the ground, the stringers, will just give them the bare facts, and then they'll add the color up back in New York, which is funny.
Totally. Yeah.
And so you do have that dispiriting thing. And in some ways, Hunter took the most rational approach to pseudo events, which is this: the only way I can get anything out of this is to introduce chaos into it, because it's a constructed, artificial, mechanical process to be written about in an artificial and mechanical way. So the only way for this to have something new or get some energy into it or to be seen in a new light is to be really fucked up during it, and maybe cause like problems and accidents too, and maybe not even go to the things that they say we all have to go to, because if you go to those things, you're seeing what they want you to see. But if you go to other things, you might see up somebody's dress. You might see around a corner, something real might happen. Somebody who somebody was supposed to be at the gaggle at the press event will actually be in the bar because they got in a fight with their boss, and we'll find out like about dissension at the Super Bowl, and we'll actually have a story finally about the Super Bowl. So Hunter was a very shrewd journalist in a way by introducing chaos into a process that is all too predictable. But what I love about the middle of this book, because he just blows off the Mint. I mean, there's nothing to be done. He just uses his expense account, abuses it, overspends, and he's basically a felon at the halfway point of the book, and a fugitive, because they've run up their bill. They can't pay anything like what they spent. They don't. He didn't really. Does he even file a story? I don't think he does.
No, but he gets a new assignment, which is hilarious.
But it's like, but that's the moment that makes this book brilliant. He's had his lowest point. He's been to the Mint 400. It sucked. He hates himself. He tells us he's at this point making $35 a month. He's drunk all the liquor. They've lost all the drugs. They got kicked out of the hotel, and Deus Ex Machina, the telegram. I mean, in novels, it's
telegram's hilarious too.
It's a hoary device, but yeah, the telegram comes from heaven. I mean, heaven. Rolling Stone. You read it.
Yeah, urgent speed letter. Hunter S. Thompson, C.O. Rowell, Duke, soundproof suite, 1850, Mint Hotel, Las Vegas. Call me at once. Repeat at once. We have a new assignment beginning tomorrow. Also, Vegas, don't leave. Stop. The National Conference of District Attorneys invites you to their 4-day seminar on narcotics and dangerous drugs at Dunes Hotel. Stop. Rolling Stone called. They want 1,000 words. Massive payment. Total expenses, including all samples. Stop. We have reservations at Hotel Flamingo and White Caddy Convertible. Stop. Everything is arranged. Call immediately for details. Urgent. Repeat. Urgent. Stop. Dr. Gonzo. And obviously, this is a facsimile of, his real recollections and what the real assignment was. But it's brilliantly reproduced, right? And he did get an assignment from Rolling Stone in real life. So he ends up turning around, so resupplying drugs, car, everything, going to a different hotel.
He's going to get samples. He's going to get samples of the dangerous drugs. He infinite expense account, like you say, new Cadillac, white Cadillac this time. It's almost as though it's a reverse karma. Like God rewards you for your sins and punishes you for your good deeds. It's got to, in the back of Hunter's mind, seem like, oh boy, this is actually how fate destroys you, by giving you what you want and everything you want at once. And he's up for things enough because the feature of Hunter Thompson's character in this book, and maybe in general, but in this book, is that he's up for things. He's an enthusiast. He's curious. He wants to see to the end. He wants the end of the story. He's not the guy who goes to bed. He's not the guy who wait, I got my workout. Well, that's enough. I'm pretty fucked up. The story will be good enough. Either he doesn't do the story at all, or he does it obsessively. And so
he's like Ice Cube. He's down for whatever.
Right. That he's down for life. It's his sheer joy to vivre that is infectious here. And then what happens is getting this second chance, beware a second chance. All his sins are forgiven, and he starts out. And now we're going to see, what does he do under the best conditions? Because he's actually interested in this subject.
Of course he is.
This isn't the Mint 400. This is the man. He's going right up against the Squareville, the people who killed the 60s, the Dallas straight boys and housewives. And, it's the freak versus the establishment. And we want to see that fight. That's a title bout.
So it's two of the most unapologetic drug abusers in history going to a convention of narcs in a Las Vegas hotel, right? And so that's automatically funny. And as you mentioned, Hunter had a brilliant grip on a type of comic method. It's the sort of Sparrow and Church theory, which is that nothing can be serious when you introduce the an unexpected stimulus into an environment, right? So the preacher is giving a serious sermon and a bird lands on his head. It's funny, right? And Hunter Thompson is always that variable. A lot of what he does in his stories is he inserts himself as a destructive, crazy, chaotic plot element into an otherwise, staid or static environment. And sometimes that can be spray painting "fuck the Pope" on the side of an America's Cup yacht. But this is the all-time example of him sort of becoming the great plot element in one of his stories.
And this is a book of beautiful vignettes, really beautiful vignettes, and realistic, true-to-life vignettes. Let me name a few. When he's leaving the first time, before he knows he can come back, he gets stopped by a cop out on the freeway to L.A. And he explains his theory of how you shouldn't just pull over right away for cops. You should lead them on a little bit of a chase because it's fun for them. They respect you for it. That's why they got in the job.
Have a perfectly executed 4-leaf clover. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You also demonstrate that you really know how to drive, that you're not just some punk out there. And so he leads this young cop. And what's interesting is that Hunter likes other people. And though he fulminates about, squares and dicks and everything, the cop, he realizes a young guy who's in his first job, and he sympathizes with him. He's like, if this guy arrests me, he's going to have to hang around the court, waste a lot of time filling out papers. I'm going to be a real problem for him. And he doesn't even take the cop's first offer, which was, "Hey, man, I think you maybe need a couple hours nap." And Hunter's still so much in like agro turbo mood that that's not what I fucking need. But you hear him say, like, this guy's trying to be nice to me. What's wrong with you? And finally, this, baby-faced cop Hunter comes down, gives him a slap on the wrist. But it's a very poignant interaction in which he sees this guy as a person. He sees his plight. There's another great vignette when he's in line. There's a cop or a district attorney checking into the hotel. They're at the Flamingo this time, which is the big time, not the Little Mint. Flamingo at the time is the super hotel, and giant pools, long hallways. And there's a cop who's having problems with the clerk because the clerk can't find his reservation, and his wife is there, and she's upset. And Hunter just absolutely joyously, with total pleasure, slides in and says, "Excuse me, I do have a reservation, and maybe I could just get this over with, and then you guys can have your thing." And so he Bigfoots the cop in line with his reservation and everything, and that's his like, fuck you to the man. And anybody would kind of like that. So he before where he's empathetic, this time he's a dick, but in a way that like we all enjoy and he takes pleasure in. But for me, what I had forgotten, the sequence that I forgot in this book that really was real and really spoke to the way the 60s and early 70s were, is when he comes in to the Flamingo, where Gonzo has already checked in, and Gonzo's got this girl with him. And she's a teenager. She's maybe 18, maybe not. And she's come down to Vegas because she has a hobby. She's from Montana. She's from a little town in Montana. And she has spent her adolescence making portraits of Barbra Streisand. And she wants to give Barbara one of them. And she's run away. And she's just been given LSD for the first time by Dr. Gonzo. And so she's doesn't know where she is. She's confused. She's surrounded. The room is filled with portraits of Barbra Streisand. Hunter
This is
doesn't want
already
to
a
tell.
nightmare for anybody on drugs, but
Yeah,
anyway, yeah.
right. She may be underage. She's pure of heart, but her wild side has come out because of the drugs a little bit. And Hunter secretly knows, having read the paper, that Barbara Streisand is going to be in town for 2 weeks. And at first he does this, savage comic thing. Well, this is a gift. We'll pimp her out. We'll just keep her on drugs all weekend, pimp her out. We can make $1,000 a day. Oh, depending on what she'll do and how.
Could be 2,000.
Yeah. And Dr. Gonzo's like, you monster. What are you talking about? This country girl from Montana came down to give her portraits of you want to pimp her out? He backs off on that. And then he starts getting really scared that there's no situation in which this girl, if the cops come, can't just hang them both with a basic description of how she met them and how she's on LSD now and so on. And he gets really scared. But the portrait of this runaway country girl, and I live in the West of small town girls taken off from their family and going to Las Vegas. It happens all the time, thinking they can make money. Or LA, and I live in the world of eccentric people who are a little bored, who, don't have much of a home life, and they just decide they're going to paint portraits of Barbara Streisand, and they fan out and so on. It's really touching in a weird way, and it's very true to life. And even though the comedy of how are we going to unload this liability is Hunter's main concern, I thought, this guy, he doesn't sacrifice it all to comedy. He makes comedy out of reality. He that is a found situation and an authentic situation. And though it's all heightened, a real kind of person and a real situation that you get in. And he handles it both savagely and delicately, and with actual empathy and identification with the girl's plight. Of course, she thinks she's an idiot and, off her rocker. But that's part of my thesis, that he loves America. It's a very American type, the innocent girl, in love with showbiz, little off her rocker, out of her depth. And it's just portrayed beautifully. It made me admire him as a writer.
Well, yeah, because he goes into the room and he instantly, in 1 second, sizes up the entire equation. He realizes that his attorney has been giving one of his, top secret massages, or whatever, I forget what the phrase is, to Lucy. He realizes that she's whacked out on acid. He sees all the portraits, so he knows the intensity,
right,
how heartfelt she is, how crushing the disappointment is going to be when she comes down, right, and how guilty they are, both morally and legally. And so in 1 second, he sizes all of that up and realizes that, almost like putting a dog down, he's got to do something horrible, which is deceive her and kind of send her on her way. And the way he describes it is funny, but it's very he's pretty harsh on himself and the attorney in that moment, and that's what you're talking about. Like it is touchingly rendered, in the sense that it conveys real guilt and a real understanding of how monstrous they are in that moment.
Right.
And so
it also answers the question that's in the back of our mind: what happened to the age of Aquarius? What happened to the age of Aquarius is it got vulnerable girls to run away from Kalispell, Montana, with delusional ideas about making it big in Southern California, and it got a lot of drugs into the systems of people who can't handle them. We can handle them. We're the pros, but Lucy can't. And
Yeah, a lot of them got turned out, and but yeah.
Yeah, he almost I think indulges in that pimping fantasy to remind the reader that that's what happens to these girls.
Yeah, it even happened with the Manson family, which he brings up in the book, that that they were spotted in this part of the world, right? And right, so in the back of your minds, you're thinking about what happened during this era. Well,
those are the girls that ended up in Haight-Ashbury on speed with bad VD, going, "Dad, get me home."
Right, after they'd shot 50 porn movies for for a bunch of predatory dudes, it was a horrible thing, and that was what was disillusioning for a lot of people, which is especially because this was a generation where young men were being sent off to die and to kill in the horrible, unjustifiable war overseas, and so there was initially this sense of like moral superiority, like we're going to build this better alternative way, and it just didn't go that way in the end, right? Like it went bad in a lot of different directions. The Manson family was, maybe too much was made of it. It was more of a media story than a real life phenomenon, but there was a lot of stuff that didn't go right, and the Weather Underground, and all the bombings and everything at the end of that were happening at exactly this period in American history. It was tough to argue that the peace, love, and understanding generation had turned out well.
Well, but not just the war does exist. The 3 points I was going to make coming in. First, one of them has to do with the war. And you kind of made it. At one point, Hunter, to a hotel clerk or somebody, he says, "Hey man, there's a war on." He's trying to get the guy to get serious. And the guy goes, "What war?" And he's like, "Vietnam War on TV up in my room." And that to me is a very pointed and subtle way of saying, like, we're all jacking off. Whether we approve of it or not, we're going to the Mint 400 and other people are dying. And this is no longer the flower children, Woodstock era in which we can pretend that we're all that morally superior, because here we are doing drugs, listen to music, listen to Jefferson Airplane. They listen to that particular surrealistic pillow and getting ourselves off. But over there, right or wrong, people our age are dying and living in hell and having to kill other people. And suddenly our protest movement looks a lot more like a self-indulgence movement.
At that point. Yeah,
at that point.
Mm-hmm.
See, I think what the book really is about the descent of the 1960s into consumerism and self-gratification.
Right.
This is
which is what really happened. Yeah.
This is a book that's all about consumerism. It really is. Okay. It is filled with brand names. Every drink that Hunter has is either Chivas Regal or some other branded kind of
the Neutrogena bath soaps.
Yeah, that is almost symbolic. The Gonzo somehow gets his car, the maids to fill his car with 600 bars of clear Neutrogena bath soap. And I remember, I'm exactly the age to remember when they came out with that stuff, and it did have this like, whoa, sophisticated, it's sort of translucent, it's brown, it's Neutrogena, maybe a little science in there. Like that, the Neutrogena moment was when we went from Ivory frickin' soap and Dial if you were sweaty to Neutrogena, to really caring about our skin. And I think what Hunter is, and if you think about drugs are the ultimate consumer item. They're the ultimate self-gratification. As the pharma industry really realizes and will soon make totally clear when they brand name psychedelics, which they're about to do. And so Hunter realizes that it's consumerism. It's a Cadillac. It's the Cadillac. It's the Ford Bronco. He wants the Ford Bronco. He wants the big caddy. He wants
priest robes.
Yeah, exactly. He wants this kind of Tanqueray and Chivas Regal, and he wants to stay at these hotels, and and everything has descended into consumerist self-gratification. There's nothing left of the idealism. We somehow just became people who want to feel good all the time and fill our face and make our skin soft and drive around in, impressive cars. We became what we were criticizing. And this is that moment of that descent into consumerism. And where else to set it but Las Vegas, the place that brings everything to you. Like, they're always using like room service. They walk through. I wish I could go through hotels like Hunter Thompson. Like, I'm going to need you to, he says, not only I need you to park my car, but you guys, if you have any time, I need a hot wax on it too. And, get me this, get me that. He's like a guy who just turns everybody into his servant, everybody into his gopher. I'll need enough ice for a night. I'll need this much booze. And he keeps tracks of his drugs in that very, materialistic way too. And you just go like, it's materialism. That's what he's talking about. This is an orgy of American materialism at the end of a supposed age of dreamy utopianism.
Yeah, even the drug collection at the beginning is shopping. It's
right.
it's a shopping binge, right?
Right.
And it's the world's best one ever, right? He gets the best collection of drugs you can possibly imagine. And yes, the idealistic fervor is gone, and there was some of it in his earlier writing, right? Especially, during when he was writing Hell's Angels, and
right,
there was some other earlier stuff.
My friend Frank Girardo, newspaper editor, former editor of the Pasadena paper, best old time gumshoe journalist I know. When I was in Los Angeles covering that Clark Rockefeller trial, and Frank knew his way around the courtroom, and he was kind of my helper that whole time, my advisor, my mentor. He took me down into the barrio outside of downtown LA one day, and he said the greatest piece of journalism in my book is Hunter Thompson's piece on, and I can't remember, it was about a sort of what they called in those days, like a Chicano leader, some kind of a riot that went down.
Yeah, this is the Banshee Screams for Buffalo Meat, I think was the name of that piece, and I think that was actually about this Oscar Zeta Acosta, who's the attorney.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And he said that captured this neighborhood. He said that is the best piece of like point of view, get on the scene, meet the people, conjure the atmosphere journalism that I know of. He's my hero.
But that's not what this book is. I mean, this book is about other stuff. It's just the highest flying satire,
right?
And literature too, right? I mean, it's a first person novel where
it's about corruption.
It's about corruption of the self, but also of the country. And even though the idealism is gone, they're still able to take the piss out of the squares.
Right.
The classic scene in the book has a lot of scenes that are laugh out loud funny, memorable. I mean, you mentioned the White Rabbit tub scene where the attorney eats all the acid and wants Hunter to throw the radio in right at the right moment of the song, and he pulls the radio out
and kill himself. It's like autoerotic. He wants autoerotic electrocution. It's so funny. Yeah, because if you know the song White Rabbit, it's dun 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 dun, dun. It builds to this orgasmic drug high.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and he wants, at the very peak, he wants Hunter to throw the radio into the bathtub, electrocute him, and die that way. And my feelings during that scene were also, wow, stuff like that happens. Because I was in some pretty heavy worlds back when, and people, I had friends who didn't make it. Okay, I had friends who didn't make it, who did things like that. I had a friend who sat in a basement for many, many days asking to be beamed up by the Star Trek Enterprise, and refusing all help and getting all dehydrated. I had a friend who plucked out his own eyeballs because he had some idea on acid, and that, even though it's a satire, like, those radios got thrown into those bathtubs every once in a while. That was, Joan Didion, who wrote about this same milieu, but she wrote about it from the cool point of view of a good California girl who'd been raised properly and was gimlet-eyed about everything. And she too wrote about Las Vegas. And to her, Hunter Thompson, all the revolutionaries, Jim Morrison, Huey Newton, they were all crazy people, kids out of their depth. But Hunter Thompson also conveys to you in one part how great he talks about driving into driving over the Bay Bridge into Berkeley, into the East Bay, any weekend in the mid '60s. And you didn't have an appointment, you didn't know where you were going, but you knew you were going to have the best time of your life. You just didn't know how. Every time you took that trip,
you could feel the energy, right? And
you could feel the energy. Like,
now this is
it's called trying to get back to that first high,
And so, in the last scene I wanted to talk about through this middle portion of the book, which is, as you say, a lot of it is about the disillusionment with this, the end of the '60s. The Lucy scene is crushing, right? The attorney White Rabbit scene actually has some amazing. It has a line in it that will stick with you forever if you've ever taken drugs, which is, you can turn your back on a person, never turn your back on a drug, right? Like, he's sitting there with a huge blade, and that is very good advice for anybody who's a young person. But then there's a scene where they actually go to this narc convention, and it's rife with danger because, of course, they're felons, and the worst kind. They've already committed God knows how many crimes by this point. But they end up in a conversation with some Georgia sheriff, and they get into this rap. And this is a Hunter technique. I don't know where he got it from, by the way. I'm actually curious to know. There's a moment where suddenly two characters who have been talking to each other go into like an Abbott Costello routine. Like, they go into perfect comic timing, like acting in front of a third party. And here he and the attorney, they're pretending to be narcs from California.
Well, that was an established kind of an established social trick in those days called goofing. It started with the beats, where you would slide into a character and then you would inhabit the character, and that's called goofing. And see how far you could take it, how well you could inhabit it, how much others would buy it, and so on. So it was something people did.
I'm sure they did. I can't remember another writer who did this well, like that particular technique of having, two people just sort of slide perfectly into character for the comic routines, tag teaming this poor, Georgia sheriff. And they're talking about how, you think you have it tough in Georgia, like in California, the drug addicts. They're everywhere, and they jump out of the bushes. They take your kids, and the sheriff says, "Well, what do you do? I mean, if you can't even recognize them?" And it goes like this: "Cut their goddamn heads off," I said. "Every one of them. That's what we're doing in California." "What?" "Sure," said my attorney. "It's all in the QT, but everyone who matters is with us all the way down the line." "God, I had no idea it was that bad out there," said our friend. "We keep it quiet," I said. "It's not the kind of thing you want to talk about upstairs, for instance, not with the press around." Our man agreed. "Hell no," he said. "We never hear the goddamn end of it." "Dobermans don't talk," I said. "What?" "Sometimes it's easier just to rip out the backstrap," said my attorney. "They'll fight like hell if you try to take the head without dogs." And, obviously, I can't imagine that this kind of dialogue would spontaneously really happen, but it comes off perfectly in the book, like it could have happened, right? And you totally buy it. And I don't know anybody who reads that chapter and doesn't laugh out loud the whole way through, because that goofing routine is just perfectly done. And they're picking on here the 60s Square, who was a much more dangerous character in the 60s, because they were the people sending you off to Vietnam and electing Nixon and all this other stuff. Here he's just kind of a dope who's there to be made fun of, and it's a little bit less hardcore.
But again, it's similar to the scene in which Hunter gets stopped by the young highway patrolman and realizes, hey, this is just a kid trying to do his job, and like he wants to be nice to me. See, something that happens over and over again in Hunter, and this is another thing that makes him great, and that because a great writer is sort of like what you hoped Katie Porter might be. They are themselves. They're fully themselves. They're so much more themselves than people in real life are able to be themselves, that they take it to the max. But they also are self-aware. And they realize that while being themselves, they also have limitations. And they realize that their pictures of the world, though they might be hard and they might be vivid, are also always going to fall short of reality. So Hunter lets the people who, to the Hunter Thompson stereotypical character, are the enemy, he grants them humanity.
Humanity, yeah, exactly.
He makes them often innocents or rubes. And you read those scenes and you go like Hunter, this guy's a nice guy. Even often in the middle of the interactions goes like, I'm kind of being over the top. This guy doesn't deserve the thing I'm laying on him. Why can't I stop? Which would be a great quality for Americans to have right now in our politics. The ability to go like, hey, when I'm in the middle of my big trip, my America's a Christian country, and we got to get back to, basic decency trip, or I'm in the middle of my trip, like, fucking country's run by oligarchs and billionaires, and they lie to us, and the politicians are their pawns, and damn it, hey, man, if you can see around your own trip to a second, go like, hey, the guy you're yelling at, the guy that you're dehumanizing, then they just say something like, do you know where there's a good place to get a chocolate malt around here?
Right, exactly.
And like we need to break our trance, and Hunter breaks his own trances. In other words, he goes in all drug fueled and everything, practically hallucinating the other person, and then the person kind of comes out of the mist, and they're just like, I'm just an American. What's up? What's going on, mister? And that effect over and over makes you go. That's why I say he loves his countrymen, because even though he hates types, and even though he hates the man or doesn't like the system, he's not poisonous like that Hassan Piker guy. When that guy sits down and goes, I fucking hate this country, because he's getting cooked. That's not Hunter Thompson would never have said that. Not that way.
Even about Nixon, who he despised, like he humanized them. They got along. They talked about football. Hunter talked about being impressed that Nixon knew the name of some backup safety or something, like when they were recounting a game. But he was, what people remember him for are the lines like, Hunter Nixon was so crooked he needed to screw his pants on in the morning. Like he had the amazing ability for the joke, right? But he wasn't mean spirited, even though his tirades are some of his most famous writings. You're right. He tends to humanize the villains in his books,
and he tends to satirize his own zealotry or his own intensity or his, he's a skeptic about himself, even in the sense where he goes, "Did that just happen? There's something about the honest criminal America loves. There's something about, the criminal who has a heart of gold or who is running away with the loot, and there's a little kid crying, and he goes, 'Here's $100, kid.'" And Hunter, the drug addict, he knows he's not perfect because he's on drugs. He's wasted. He's looking for sensations that can barely be had on this earth. One thing that's interesting in the book is he's not very motivated by sex in the book.
Or ever.
Gonzo's like, getting into these dubious situations with little lost Bo Peep. But Hunter he's a purist. Like, he's like the worst frat boy of all time, the one who gets the frat like kicked off campus.
Yeah, but Hunter, he doesn't go there very much, even though, there are stories about him as a real life character that have gotten out, but in his writing, no, he doesn't go there.
And he doesn't give you the feeling that he hates women.
No, I never get that sense in his books. He uses some outdated language, but no, but none of it is. None of his books are ungenerous of spirit.
He rails in racist terms at his buddy, at his lawyer, at Gonzo. It really does show you that our Puritanism about language does not capture the nature of human relationships well.
No.
It's some kind of like programmatic out of a textbook or a philosophical theory idea about language and dehumanization. But you can actually humanize somebody with a slur when you read real literature, and you see that they do. It means frustration. It maybe means, but like those dudes are friends,
right? Right. Yeah, and last thing I'll say about this for today is just, we've done a bunch of novels by British writers, and they have a certain feel to them. They have a certain kind of rhythm to their different witticisms and everything. Hunter Thompson, like Twain, there's no mistaking where this person is from. This is an American writer. No one but an American could possibly have come up with the style and the phrasing and the jokes, and even a lot of the ideas in this book would be impossible for a foreigner to come up with. We have situations like Raymond Chandler, who's foreign, inventing Pulp Fiction language or helping invent it, but this is the sensibility in this book and in his other writing. It could only be an American writing this. This is all out, driving 150 miles down a highway that, the kind of highway that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, right?
Hassan Piker, I want to say, you hate this country? This country produced Hunter Thompson. How can you hate it?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
The things
and
I
he even
love
talks
about,
about that. Yeah,
the products of America that will keep you going, even in your darkest hour when you disagree with the leadership or you lost your job, are, we got Charlie Parker, we got Muhammad Ali, we got Hunter Thompson, we got a lot of things that they can't get for love or money in the other cultures of this world, and will never have. And when they see them, they go, oh my God, that looks like something that human beings can do that I never knew about and I want to do. And I just hope we keep being that country.
absolutely. Yeah, and you mentioned something there. I mean, Muhammad Ali, but this is also the age of Hunter came in with, he was still, I guess, in the Air Force in the 50s, but um, when Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley and rock and roll took the country by storm, he's the first rock and roll writer in the country, I think. Like he really was. He let it all hang out in the same way. And this book goes perfectly with Woodstock, which was a few years before it, and the kind of the triumph of free expression and letting it all hang out, and it's a beautiful thing. As you say, this is, as he says, it's a tribute to the fantastic possibilities of what this country can be. And this book is that. It's linguistically, it's like the great American book.
Well, Matt, I think we have to wind up because my computer's telling me that I am about to lose power. And
all right.
I'm about to lose power as a person, mostly because I'm on a contact high with Hunter, and just talking about him gets me all amped up. I mean, and I only read to 3/4 of the way because I can't bear for it to end. I want to just really be in it.
I have the same thing. I don't like to go too fast with this book because it's an all-in-one sitting kind of a thing if you do it the wrong way. But
yeah.
All right, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. Sorry we droned on maybe a little long about certain people on the internet, but it was fun, and hopefully we'll have some good news.
It was
next
the
week.
Gossip Show. It was
the gossip show. Whatever. Yeah, give us a break. We'll see you next week.